Have you ever wondered where the problems in the world today would exist if we had deeper connection to ourselves, others, and the environment and acted from that place? Welcome to the Conscious Action Podcast with your host, Brian Berneman, who believe that connection is the key to taking conscious action as individuals and creating a better world. We are here to raise awareness and inspire meaningful action by sharing stories, knowledge, and conversations with thought leaders and change makers. From sustainability to well-being and everything related to conscious living, our mission is to empower you to be the change that you want to see in the world.
Welcome everyone to a new episode of the Conscious Action Podcast. I am Brian Berneman, your host, and I have the pleasure to be joined all the way from Brooklyn, New York in the US by Dan Millman. Thank you so much, Dan, for taking the time. I am really excited as someone that grew up reading your book, then getting to be able to really understand through my own path as well, part of what you've been sharing through your life. So for everybody that is listening and watching us, I'd love for you to share a little bit about you, your story, your journey.
I'm happy to be here with you and to share a bit of my story for those listeners who aren't familiar with who is this guy and what is his life about and why is he on your show. I started out as a young trampoline bouncer. Most of us have seen or experienced that, jumping on a small or larger trampoline. I never knew that it would lead to a scholarship to college, a gymnastics career, later coaching at Stanford University in the United States, and then I moved on to be a professor at Oberlin College in the US, in Ohio, and all that followed, travels around the world and working with 4 mentors over 20 years. But so I started out in athletics, in the field of sport, which kept me practical. I was more interested in practical outcomes based on conscious action than abstract philosophy, which has its place, of course, but it really wasn't for me. So it kept me grounded. And it was really the preparation for big picture, transcendental, or if you will, even though it's a loaded term, spiritual practice. Most people think of spiritual practice as inner work, meditation, yoga, and so on. And that's fine. That's certainly one facet of what we might call spiritual. To me, spiritual is whatever inspires us. I once asked my daughter when she was 10 to list her. She was a voracious reader, and I asked Sierra, what are your 10 favorite spiritual books? And she gave me a list the next day, and not a single one had metaphysics or religion or depending on beliefs or ideas. All of them were books that inspired her. And so whenever we're touched and uplifted and inspired, we could call that spiritual or spirited. Though I'll have to say, somebody came up to me after a talk I gave and said, Dan, I don't know, I feel really inspired. I said, don't worry, it'll pass. Because inspiration comes and goes, so does motivation. So I've had to learn to be very practical. What can we integrate in daily life? To me, daily life is a form of spiritual weight training. It's I view planet Earth, so people will know where I'm coming from. I view planet Earth as a divine school for souls, and daily life is our classroom. And most of us have noticed that lessons repeat themselves until we learn them. And if we don't learn the easy lessons, they tend to get a little more dramatic until we do learn them. So I view life as a school. Daily life is going to teach us all that we need to learn to evolve as human beings. What a book or a teacher can do is to, I'm like a yellow highlighter in the book of life. I offer reminders, perspectives, observations that help people to learn more from their everyday experience, to evolve, let's say. So anyway, I was moved over time in working with 4 mentors, primary mentors over 20 years, as I said, a long time of preparation. I was moved to write a book I didn't know what to call the book. It was about a lot of things, living in the present moment and letting go, and things we all understand, but I wanted to communicate it in a way that was practical and touch people. But years before writing the book, I was teaching a martial arts class at Oberlin at the college. And it consisted of two martial arts that I had studied, Aikido and Tai Chi Chuan. And so I was going to, for the course catalog, I was going to call it The Way of the Warrior. It made sense, martial arts. But then I said, no, these are internal martial arts. They're more receptive. They're not aggressive arts. So a light bulb went on, and I said, oh, why don't I call it The Way of the Peaceful Warrior? So because many people, because that's what I ended up titling the book, The Way of the Peaceful Warrior, or Path, an approach to living. It wasn't necessarily about fighting, except maybe those inner demons of insecurity, self-doubt, the things we all deal with in everyday life at times. So really, to me, everyone, you, me, everyone I know is a peaceful warrior in training in the school of daily life. And the reason I say that, it's not some fancy label gratuitously, that I give people. Everyone I know is seeking to live with a more peaceful heart, a sense of equanimity, even serenity in the midst of the chaos of the daily news. But at the same time, I think all of us recognize that we need at times a warrior spirit to roll up our sleeves and just face, in the form of conscious action, what we need to in everyday life. Beyond, through procrastination, through fears, and so on. So I ended up calling my best known book, when people say I've read your book, they usually refer to Way of the Peaceful Warrior, though I've written 18 books. It only took me 40 years to do it, and I never wrote a book. I didn't write a book for 10 years after Peaceful Warrior, because I felt I'd said what I have to say. But then new mentors entered my life, and so much exciting information that was cutting edge that I was moved to write Sacred Journey of the Peaceful Warrior, No Ordinary Moments, and my other books over that time. So I'm an author and a speaker. Some say spiritual teacher, but I don't hold that up as some kind of title. Mm-hmm. So I guess that athletic background and how my first book came about, it went out of print very quickly because it was subtitled A Basically True Story. Because my first book does blend autobiography, things that actually happened to me, with some fictional elements. So that's why my editor thought it would be clever to call it A Basically True Story. But the bookstores, this was pre-internet. It had to be in a bookstore, and the bookstores didn't know where to put it. Is it in the fiction or nonfiction? It can't be both, but it was. So, for the sake of the story and the teaching. And later it was adapted to a film in 2006 with Nick Nolte called Peaceful Warrior. Some people have seen the film. The book is better. Most books are better than the movies because you get the inner life of the character in more detail. So I hope maybe it's a long-winded response, but I hope that responds to your initial request.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. I often love listening to people's stories, and especially, I have read that book, The Way of the Peaceful Warrior. I have watched the movie. And through the years, I've seen a lot of your content. So I know the story, but I'm also aware there's a lot of people that don't know the story. So I do recommend people to either go and watch the movie if it's easier, or to read the book or read any of the other books that Dan has written, because I think that one of the things for me, and why I think that when I was younger, I connected with those teachings, was the fact that I wasn't present at all. I was completely just, how most of us grew up in society. I grew up back in Argentina, typical life. And then at one moment, I was introduced to different perspectives, different teachings, different traditions, and something started to resonate with me. And one of the things that I remember, that once I saw the movie, I was like, I had a visual representation of something that was actually starting to take place in my life in terms of how my time was expanding in a sense, because I was able to be present, and I was having these moments, these glimpses of this is what it is to be fully present and to notice. And and to be able to recognize as well that, yes, we live in this society as well. There's stuff going on. I have all of this inner talk in my head. I have all of these emotions. I have all of this trauma from the past, whatever you want to call it. So how can I bring some of these things that I was learning in these classes, listening to these teachers, into my daily life? And that for me has been one of the things that I love about your work as well.
Well, thank you. And you've expressed probably something that many people can reflect upon and relate to. And it was about me. I mean, that's why I don't ever presume to put myself above other people, and no one should put me on a pedestal. In fact, my latest book, called Peaceful Heart, Warrior Spirit, it's right over here. It's the true story behind the story of Way of the Peaceful Warrior. And one of the themes that is repeated, because it's really about the spiritual quest. The four mentors with whom I worked had very different approaches, radically different approaches to the transcendent, to how to live wisely and well, and understand life's bigger picture. So the theme that is repeated is all teachers are human and all humans have flaws. Sometimes little ones, sometimes much bigger. Fortunately, I have a wife of 48 years now, Joy, who will kick my bum if I stray at all. And so I credit her with helping me to keep in good integrity. Because if I wasn't practicing what I present to people, then I'm just mouthing the words. I would have no impact really on a deeper level. So I'm kind of every man, every woman. I mean, I'm just a human being. I don't talk to men or women. I talk to human beings, all of us stumbling toward the light. And so it's all part of our process. We're all essentially equal, even though we have different life experience. So one of the reasons I agreed to be on your podcast is I love the title, Conscious Action. Because people might say, well, yeah, I'm listening to Dan, he's making sense so far, but what is his approach? What is this peaceful warrior's approach to living? How does it maybe differ from all the other books I've read, or teachings from India, from China, from Japan, and so on? Well, first of all, it's brand X, it's generic. It's not based on Hindu teachings or the Course in Miracles or one or another source, because I had a wide breadth of different teachers, different mentors. I've been able to, I'm like a martial artist who's taken 10 different martial arts rather than just focusing on one for 40 years, which gives you a certain depth in that one art, but I've gained perspective and a way to share with people that they can relate to. But one of the central things that I have to teach, one of the core issues, there are two things actually. First, where I'm coming from is that there is no best book, including mine, no best teacher, no best religion or philosophy or path or system of exercise or diet. There is only the best for each of us at a given time of our life. Life is an experiment. We have to find out what works for us. So I have tremendous respect for each individual's process, where they are. And in terms of my respecting people's process, I would implore your listeners to also respect their process. And especially if they're young people, who today depression is growing because people are looking on social media and everyone seems to be having a better time than they believe they are, and look better and have more fun, but that's false. Each of us has our own battles. One of my books points that out very clearly. So I would implore people to stop comparing yourself to other people. because that's a profound disrespect for your own life, your own uniqueness. What is that saying? Someone once said, be yourself because everyone else is already taken. So it's so important. When I taught gymnastics, when I taught beginners, some people eventually learn a somersault faster than other people. But I also noticed that those who took longer to learn it often learned it better than those who learned it faster. So each of us needs to respect our own way of learning and our own way of living, and just stop comparing. If people can be having fun, great. If we're all one on some level, then your friend on social media, their joy and happiness is yours too. Wouldn't it be a great place to be happy for them rather than comparing ourselves and saying, but I'm not as wealthy or as handsome or attractive or whatever as they show in these pictures in their best moments. So I think that's very important to respect our own process. One other thing, and this is where it comes back to conscious action. One of the most controversial things that I teach, Brian, is that I do not ask people or encourage anyone to feel happy or loving or peaceful or kind or courageous or confident. I only encourage them to behave that way. And this is why I learned over time that we have much less control by our will, by our intention, much less control over what emotions are passing through us like the weather in any given moment to try to change our emotions. And we have much less control over what thoughts are appearing in our awareness. We have the greatest control, in fact, the only thing we actually have control over in this life is our actions, our behavior. That's it.
Yeah.
Actions and behavior, conscious action. Now, some people may say, wait a minute, you're saying you're not encouraging me to feel one way or another, just to behave that way. But what if I'm feeling angry? You're saying behave with kindness? Yes. What if I'm feeling shy? Can I behave with confidence? Yes. You see, our emotions, our thoughts, what mood we're in, how much energy we have, all these things create tendencies to behave in a certain way. But that doesn't mean we have to behave that way. It's not a compulsion. And this is a whole new way of living. This one idea to focus more on our actions, our behavior, what we do. Because if I were to ask any listener to touch the tip of their nose, they could probably do it unless they're disabled or have paralysis. They could intend for their hand to come up and touch their nose. That's a miraculous activity. Just, wow, I think I want to touch my nose. Okay, and the hand comes up and it does it. We have control over how we move our mouth, though it doesn't always feel under our control, how we move our arms and legs and body. And by focusing more on that, it radically simplifies life. There's a wonderful saying by a writer named Barbara Rasp. She said, the lesson is simple, the student is complicated.
Yeah.
We complicate everything.
Yeah.
But some people will say, no, I've read books, I've heard teachings about how I can will myself and change my emotional state. Well, yeah, there are a lot of ways to influence our emotions, our breathing, our posture. We can do our neurolinguistic programming or whatever. There are a lot, and method actors try to bring up emotions by remembering vividly from the past and so on and so forth. Lots of ways to influence our emotions. But control, influence means we have a goal to feel a certain way, and then we take action to try to feel that way, and it may work and it may not.
Yeah.
That's why method actors tend to be a little bit odd, because they're trying to create an emotion. But I could ask anybody, if you're feeling very angry, can you just go, oh, that's not good for my immune system, stop. Okay. No. We've all snapped out of it at times. We probably remember when we were very sad or very angry, and then we were laughing. But it's rare to just snap out of it. Emotions pass through us, and they will pass. So our emotional states are always changing. And our thoughts happen to us. We don't say, I think I'll think this thought next. So instead of the complications of trying to think more positively, have fewer negative thoughts, and have more positive, resourceful emotions, and do emotional healing and all that, just emotions come and go, and so do thoughts. Focus on what we do, conscious action. And that can make a real difference, because our lives right now are shaped. Everything we've achieved and done and brought us to this moment are based on what we've done over time, not what we've just thought or felt. So those are two ways that perhaps differ from some other teachings. And it may take a while for some people that they can be disoriented. Wait a minute, this is kind of new. I'm not sure this is true. Don't believe it because I'm saying it. Check it out in your experience. Do you have as much control over your emotions or thoughts as you do what you actually do? Shoma Morita, a Japanese psychiatrist, once said, when running up a hill, it's okay to quit. Give up as many times as you want, as long as your feet keep moving.
Yeah. Dan, one of the things that a lot of times with my students I teach here at the university in Auckland, and one of the things that I often share with my students is about the power of the present moment. And as what you're saying is like, yes, what came just now, even if it was 10 minutes ago, 1 minute ago, 30 seconds ago, what is happening now? And what am I choosing now? Because as you're saying, one of the biggest things that I learned through the years, and I try to apply it and practice it as much as possible all of the time, is this surrendering as not as a way of being defeated, is surrendering as a way of allowing and not being attached. This is one of the reasons why I was drawn to one of my teachers, which is a Tibetan Buddhist Lama, that was teaching how to make daily life your teacher, how to allow every single moment, every single thing that is taking place to be a way of learning about myself and about how I am relating externally and internally. And this has been a lot of times one of the things that it's like, okay, like this happened. This wasn't what I was hoping for. This wasn't what I was thinking. But this happened. I was living, one of the times that I was living in the US, I was living in this Buddhist retreat center in California. And from one day to the next, my work visa extension wasn't accepted. So from one day to the next, it was like, that's it. Like all of my life changes. I need to leave the country. And I remember in that moment, I was like, everybody was like so sad and telling me all of these things. And I'm like, I just need to go. That's it. Like there is nothing beyond the fact that I need to go. And then, yes, my plans change. My entire perspective on what I'm going to do has to change. And I'm adapting to that. And this is, I think that, from what you shared is how can we use each moment to allow actions to be what is dictating our future, because what we do now is what affects our future, just like the past affects our present.
Right. If we want to change our past, then constructive and positive action in the present moment, because our present will soon become our past. That's the only way I know of doing it. One of my books is called The 4 Purposes of Life. It's a small book. And when I was writing the book, a friend came up to me and said, well, Dan, I don't need your book. I know the purpose of life. It's love. He said, whatever the question, love is the answer. And I went, that's a really good purpose. And another friend said, well, wait a minute. Isn't the central purpose of human life transcendence, realization, enlightenment? I went, well, that's really a good purpose too. And then another friend said, but yeah, that's all philosophy. He said, our purpose is reproducing and keeping the species alive. So get busy, So all those are good purposes. But just as we divide the days of the year into 4 seasons and the points on a compass into 4 primary directions, by looking at our lives through the filter of these 4 purposes, it helps organize our experience and gives us a sense of direction, meaning, and purpose in everyday life. So the first purpose of life, by the way, is learning life's lessons. And that's really a central part of self-knowledge. See, if we don't really know ourselves, and it takes time to know ourselves, even in the sense of what are my talents, what am I good at and not good at, what are my interests, not just what I think I should do or someone else thinks I should do, but what am I actually interested in? And 3, what are my values? That takes a while. We have to test ourselves. Usually it doesn't happen until 10 years after university or our education is done in the real world to learn that. But those are 3 practical ways of self-knowledge. If we don't know ourselves, we end up making the right decision or decisions for the wrong person, the one we thought we were. We've all had, some of us have had that experience in relationship, work, and so on. We change and we discover who I am is not really fitting this. So that's the first of the purposes. In one of my books, somebody might say, well, fine, Dan, life is a school, but what courses do we have to pass in order to graduate? And I wrote a book called Everyday Enlightenment, which is the 12 courses in the School of Life. The second purpose is the one we normally think of. What am I here to do? Is our career and calling. And there's a difference between the two. A career is how we make an income, to move out of our parents' basement, for example, or to become more independent. It's a basic life skill, producing an income, using our intelligence, our labor, our attention, our energy to make a living. We may like a lot of things about our work, but if we weren't making any money doing it, we'd have to find something else. Now, what is a calling? How is that different from our career? A calling is something we just love doing. It may or may not ever make any money, but we just love doing it in our discretionary time. But it's important to understand the two. Sometimes they become the same. In my case, my career and calling are the same. Now, how does one know if their career and calling have merged? Easy. If you win the lottery, would you continue doing what you're doing? If the answer is yes, it's also your calling. If it's no, I would quit the next day, then it's just a job. But it's important for people to understand the two so we don't have starving artists feeling like they have to continue with their guitar practice all day and not sell out. But maybe they should get a day job and also practice their guitar, that sort of thing. So the third purpose is more mysterious. It's one of my best-selling books is called The Life You Were Born to Live, which has the life purpose system. And by the way, for any interested listeners, they can go to my website, peacefulwarrior.com, and they can click on find your life purpose. And there'll be a calculator where you put in your date of birth, and you might get some surprising information about your life path. So that's a practical offering in that arena. The fourth purpose, though, now we're coming back to what you were saying before, and I really appreciate your sharing your actual experience about the law of surrender. The fourth purpose, the most important one, is the purpose that is arising in this moment, in each arising moment. We may not know our cosmic purpose, but I know my purpose right in this moment, and you know yours, and so do your listeners. So we always know our purpose in the moment. And the idea of surrendering to the moment, again, I'm going to mention another of my books called The Laws of Spirit. One of the key laws in that book is the law of surrender, in the sense you use it, not defeat, but surrendering to the moment. In other words, non-resistance. Going with the moment. Whatever life gives you, make it over your way, like a good martial arts master, an Aikido master. The force comes at you, use it. Don't resist it, because there'll always be big forces. So, for example, and when we talk about the present moment, Ram Dass wrote Be Here Now. Tolle wrote The Power of Now. I write about the present moment. The movie emphasizes that particular facet of my teaching. And the paradox, as I see it, Brian, is that there is no such thing as the present moment. How do you grasp a nanosecond? That's a millionth of a second. Which of those moments, which of those nanoseconds is the present? How can you get a hold of it? Any physicist will tell you there's no actual literal present moment. So when teachers like me talk about the present moment, we're just saying handle what's in front of you. Because most of us get lost. See, our bodies, people say, Dan, how do I live in the present moment? I go, you can't not live in the present moment. Your body always exists moment to moment, here. It can't go anywhere else that we know of so far. But it's the mind. Our attention drifts to what we call the past, which is just a set of neural impulses in our brain we call memory. And the future we call imagination. Now, these are wonderful human faculties. To be able to remember, people who have no more memory, we know that's a tragedy. And imagination is wonderful to help us plan our day and so on. But we don't want to get too attached to the plans or the memories because they can be distorted. And if we imagine our day and write down everything we think we're going to do, usually it changes in the course of the day. So we don't want to get attached. So our mind flits from past to future. They seem more real than the present. But so it's a skill, it's a habit to gradually realize this moment and this moment and this moment and this moment are the moment of illumination, the moment of power, the moment of sanity. People say, oh, my mind's so busy. I want to quiet my mind. I'll say, easy. Focus on the present moment because you cannot think about anything in the present moment. As soon as you think about something, you're reflecting on the past, what we call the past, or the future. But in the present moment, if you and I were sitting together, and I know you know this, Brian, but your listeners, it's just a reminder. That's what I do, is I offer reminders of what we already know, but we tend to forget in a particular way. And if we were sitting across from each other in a room, and I took out my keys, let's see, they're right here, okay? These are my keys. And if I were to take these and throw them to you and say, catch, the moment you were reaching out, you'd have a cat-like awareness, like a cat looking at a mouse, reaching for those keys to grab them. You would not be thinking about what you're going to do tomorrow or what you had for breakfast, right? You know this. And that's why we like to play frisbee, throw these flying discs, or play catch, or play a musical instrument, or paint, because it pulls us back into that zone, that sense of flow, that present moment. It's a primal joy. The problem is when we're just sitting around, our mind tends to start wandering. We get distracted and we think, what am I going to do about this? Oh, I've got a meeting to go to, that toxic personality I'm going to have to deal with. Or I wish I hadn't said that. And we get lost in all that stuff. And the more we start to realize the only moment of reality is right now. Now, Byron Katie is a friend of mine and also a colleague. She's a wonderful teacher, and she teaches what she calls it loving what is. For me, that's a bit of a stretch because I can't control whether I'm loving every moment. Feelings come and go. But embracing, accepting, flowing with whatever life gives us moment to moment is a wonderful skill. It's the first law of spirit, the law of acceptance, because stress happens when the mind resists what is, right? So these are my words. These are my reminders, and I'm sure they resonate with you, and I hope with your listeners.
Yeah, and first of all, for everyone listening, rewind, go back, listen to those reminders again. I often, this is one of the things that I often tell my students, you have already the answers. You know all of this. Now, why are you a lot of times not doing this? We all know, and I know that this is part of what you shared a lot of times. We know that we need to exercise every day, eat certain types of foods, do certain things, speak in certain ways to others. Not always happens that way. So what is the reason why? Sometimes we can find it, sometimes it doesn't really matter. Like one of the things that one of my teachers used to tell me was about the present moment, was this thing about understanding that each moment is new, and each moment is the present moment. But also, as you were saying, the present moment doesn't exist. So how can we hold these multiple perspectives as a paradox to understand this thing is true, and also the opposite is true, and another like perspective is true at the same time, and to be able to hold all of it and to be able to live more in the present? For me, it was through my body. Like for me, the return to my body and to the actions that I was taking in this present moment, and always trying to come back. It's like my mind, as you're saying, my mind starts to wonder what's coming up, and then it's like, okay, Brian, come back. What's here? What's now? And one time I asked one of my teachers, okay, how do we live in this society, like in the present moment? Because I still need to pay rent next week. And he told me, be present, don't be stupid. The future will still happen. If you don't die today, the future will happen. And still, also, it's not happening yet. So how can we be more present here to understand this? And how can we be, and this is, like the way that he was teaching this, how can we be still and ready? How can we be still and ready? You know what you're saying about throwing the keys and be ready. In the years that I was living there in the Buddhist center, we were sitting a lot of times, in meditation practice, and he would just hit like a singing ball, and in that moment we need to jump up and then just go back to sitting, and then you keep on doing that, and we never knew when that was going to happen. And that was, as just training to be present, to be still, and not to be waiting. Because it was like this thing of like, how can I just be? I don't know when this is going to happen, but it's going to happen. And using every moment, and I think that this is a word that I think that you use as well. How can we use every moment as a catalyst for change in our daily life? How can we use everything as a way to be present, and as well to understand how are we creating changes as well?
Well, very, very good points that you raise. That's why we're all peaceful warriors in training. And we have to be gentle with ourselves, because, that saying, the perfect is the enemy of good. We need to do well. We can't control the outcomes in life, but we can control our efforts. And by making a good effort over time, we vastly increase the odds of getting what we like over not making the effort. So effort, in a way, is success, because that's all we can control. And that same person who talked about running up a hill, Shoma Morita, his name was, he also said 3 guidelines for living wisely and well. First, accept your emotions and thoughts as natural to you in the moment, whether they're positive or negative. Accept them the way you would in meditation. Notice them, they arise, then they pass. You don't have to fix them, do anything about them, obey them, just notice. So you accept them. Okay, that's how it is. Then the second key is to focus on a constructive purpose. What is your purpose? What do you want? What is your aim? See, it's very respectful of each individual. Because the third key is to do what needs to be done in line with your purpose. And that describes a life that's wise and living well. To have a goal, an aim. See, we're hardwired goal seekers. 3 of my books have the word purpose in them. The Life You Were Born to Live, a guide to your life purpose. And then there's Living on Purpose and the 4 purposes of life. So a lot of purpose in there. And when I see my granddaughter, when she was crawling across the floor, she wasn't crawling across the floor, I would guess, just simply to get a workout or to exercise. She wanted her big brother's bauble or toy, that shiny toy. She wanted something. So as that young, children want something. And in the Peaceful Warrior movie, there is a scene in which my character, Dan, played by Scott Meklowitz, Dan follows Socrates way up a mountain, and they get to the very top, And Dan has this realization, you'll remember from the movie. He said, Socrates, I just realized that it's not the journey, it's not the destination that makes us happy, it's the journey. Because most of our lives are spent on the journey, not always reaching one destination after the next. And there's a certain wisdom in that idea. Most people can relate to it. But without a destination in mind, there is no journey. We just wander around. So from our point A, we need a point B. We need something we're moving toward. In fact, I define success as making progress toward a meaningful goal. Not reaching it, but making progress. Even one step up the mountain path is progress. It's a little success. And then the next step. Now you mentioned, you referred to, even though you didn't use the word, a certain paradox. There's no such thing as the present moment, but we have to live in it. One of my books, The Hidden School, goes into, and it actually is it's the only book I've ever seen that helps resolve the big problem of philosophy. Does free will exist, or does it not exist? Or is it an illusion? Mm-hmm. How about time? Is time real, or is it an illusion? How about, are we separate selves, or are we all one? Or is death real, or is it an illusion? This book, Understanding Paradox, helps us to resolve these questions. Mm-hmm. And it turns out not to be either or, but both. Both are true. Now, people might not understand what a paradox is. A paradox, a perfect example is Charles Dickens' wonderful book, A Tale of Two Cities. Most of us can recall it opens with the words, "It was the best of times, it was the worst of times." And it goes on with pairs of opposites, both of which are true. Even today, you or I could argue that this is the best of times. We could also argue it's the worst of times. And that's been true since the book was written and long before that, and will be probably true into the future, what we call the future. So that's what paradox is. If I were, for example, to say, make the statement, a spider is a vicious, merciless, bloodthirsty killer, you might agree or you might not agree, but if I were to add the words, from the viewpoint of an insect caught in its web, then you might go, oh, well, yeah, then it's true. But as it happens, more than 99% of spiders on the planet are harmless to human beings. We may not like the way they run, but they're running from us. Yeah. We're a lot bigger than them. So most spiders are harmless. So which is true? Is a spider a bloodthirsty, vicious, merciless killer? Or is it a fragile, timid, delicate little web spinner? Mm-hmm. An artist? Which is true? Both. But it depends on your point of view. We live in two worlds. We live in we live most of our lives, 98% of it, at least, for most people, live in the conventional world. Getting an education, raising children, making money, as we should, paying attention to what we need to do in everyday life. But there are people, even billionaires, who may wake up at night or in the morning wondering, what's it all about? Is it just news, weather, and sports? Is it just about making more money? What is it about? And that's when we have a yearning for the transcendent, whether it's through religion or spiritual practice, to break through into a form of liberation and freedom from this round, like rats running in a cage in a maze. Mm-hmm. Lily Tomlin once said, the problem with the rat race is, even if you win, you're still a rat. So she made a good point. So it depends on our viewpoint. And if we address the question of time, let's just imagine for a moment that you are sitting in a boat and it's floating down a river. Now I'm sitting on the shore and I'm watching you apparently moving through on a river of time, from the past, then in front of me in the present, and then off to the future. You seem to be moving through time. But from your viewpoint, you may be sitting meditating, absolutely still in the eternal present. So we could say that time is real. We have the convention of time. We have our watches. We have appointments. We had an appointment to talk today. So conventionally speaking, time is real. Transcendentally speaking, all that exists is the eternal present moment. Someone might argue that. They might say, wait a minute, Dan, I know the past exists. I have a photograph from my last birthday. Look at the party. But all that's really happening is they're showing me a photographic image in this present moment that reminds them of a memory. But all that's happening is right now. Once we start to see that, we don't have to do some special technique to live in the present moment. We realize that's all there is. Right now, right now. So anyway, I'm not going to go on at length, but it resolves free will from a conventional view. Free will exists from a transcendental view. It's an illusion. Separate selves, sure, we're separate. Conventionally speaking, if I stub my toe, it doesn't hurt you unless you're highly empathic. So we're separate nervous systems and so on. But transcendentally speaking, that we couldn't be anything but one, the same consciousness, same awareness. And is death real? Conventionally speaking, absolutely, demonstrably. But transcendentally speaking, it's impossible. Yeah. Who we are is never born and never dies. So that helps us to resolve the paradox and not argue free will is real, no it's not. Both are true, depending on our viewpoint. And it's good sometimes to step back and take that big picture viewpoint and connect with the transcendent and understand it's all unfolding gracefully.
I love, because I love that in my life, this has been one of the biggest things, is just allowing these different points of views to coexist at one time. And for me to be able to be with all of that, as you're saying, to be able to be in that space of all of these different things that, again, seem to be opposites, seem to actually negate each other. And then it's all about how am I experiencing that and how am I allowing things to unfold. I was talking once to this man that he was saying, we are sitting here and also we are flying through space at thousands of kilometers per hour, and on this rock that we are sitting on. And he's like, both of those things are true. Like, we are sitting here still just in front of the computer, and we are also flying. And it's like, those things are true. What am I experiencing? And what am I allowing of that to be experienced in this present moment? And I think that's so beautiful. And then, just because I want to honor our time, I would love it if you can share whatever comes now for you to share with our audience on how to live a more conscious life. I mean, there's plenty that you have shared, but if there's something that might help to, in a sense, simplify their lives, what would that be?
Well, one of the ways, of course, we already talked about, which is when we focus on the present moment, life is simpler. But also, people listening to this podcast, and they might have to listen to it more than once, actually. They go, yeah, but how do I apply all this in my life, in my circumstances right now? And those are the reminders I offer. Then people have to take it and use it in their own way. But one big question is, how do I turn what I know into what I actually do? In that book, Everyday Enlightenment, the 12 courses in everyday life, people might have said, well, wait a minute, what are the courses, Dan? I want to share a dream that I've had. Now, nothing is more boring than hearing someone else's dream. But what the interesting thing about this dream is, you've also had it. And all of your listeners have had it, whether or not they remember it. But some will relate to it. The dream is this. It's a recurring dream I've had in the past. What we call the past. In this dream, I have a big exam in college or high school. It's like a midterm or final exam. and I'm having trouble finding my way. I'm very confused. I'm having trouble getting there. But more common is that I realize, oh, today I have this exam, but I forgot to attend any of the classes. I signed up for a course, then I forgot that I signed up for it. Now I have an exam. Now, I don't know if you relate to this personally, but some of the people who view this podcast or listen to it will go, yeah, I've had a dream like that. And it's because it reflects our reality. We're in the school of life. Every day we have tests, but we don't know what courses we signed up for. So I'm just going to provide a list of these 12 courses so people can understand what we're here to do and what we're doing here. The first is discovering our worth to avoid self-sabotage. Okay. The second is reclaiming our will. It's about self-discipline and, again, turning what we know into what we actually do. The third is energizing our body. Those are all foundational elements because energy increases every human capacity. The fourth is managing our money, being responsible in that arena. We can't ignore that or sweep it under the rug. It's part of life. The fifth is taming our mind. And I have a very different take on that, what many meditation teachers, just meditate more, that sort of thing. The sixth is trusting our intuition. Actually, it's really about trusting both sides of our brain. And the next is accepting our emotions. The next is facing our fears. Then illuminating our shadow, which is about self-knowledge and full self-acceptance. And then embracing our sexuality. Again, we can't sweep that under the rug. It's part of human life. Accepting who we are. The two last courses in the School of Life are awakening our heart. And again, I have a different take on what that means. And the final one is serving our world, finding a form of service. My favorite movie is Groundhog Day. I don't know if you've ever seen it,
Yeah.
but it's disguised as a romantic comedy, a rom-com. And yet it ends up that there's no other game in town. It always comes to this: how can I serve other people? Because in that we find our real fulfillment. Not just, we can serve ourselves endlessly, but it doesn't lead anywhere really. Even though there's nothing wrong with having a good time and, having some pleasure in life. But ultimately, that's not the ultimate answer. So those are the courses in the School of Life. But coming back to turning what we know into what we actually do, let me just say, dream big, but start small, and then connect the dots. A little of something is better than a lot of nothing. At my website, again, peacefulwarrior.com, I have some online courses, as you know. You've looked over the website. One of them is what I call the Peaceful Warrior Workout, which I've done every day since around 1986, when I created it. It's a 4-minute workout. It's almost excuse-proof. Who doesn't have 3.5 to 4 minutes to do a workout? It incorporates every part of the body, deep breathing, tension release, and movement. So, and I do more than that, but it's always part of my daily routine, no matter where I am, every day. So that's the idea. Simple is powerful because we're more likely to do it. Let's not complicate things. People ask me, what's the best diet? I go, eat a little more of what's good for you, a little less of what's not. I'm realistic. I don't have all these rules, And there are many good books on that. Michael Pollan's book, The Omnivore's Dilemma, there are good books on diet and so on. But I don't believe we should impose a philosophy on our body. We have to check out what maintains our energy and vitality. And good nutrition, that's emphasis. Yeah. So a few other reminders, and I hope in some sense I responded to that question.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you so much, Dan, for sharing that. Thank you for your time as well. For everybody that is listening, as Dan was saying, perhaps go back, rewind, listen to this conversation again, and get what reminders actually resonate with you. This is one of the things that I often say. Not everything that we talked about or that Dan was sharing is going to be for you. Let go of that, and the things that actually make sense, take them on board, and then do something with that. Take a conscious action with that. Don't just know it, because knowledge is nothing. But as always, let us know what resonated with you from this episode. Keep the conversation going anywhere that you're finding this episode. So thank you everyone for listening, and thank you so much, Dan, for taking the time. A pleasure to be able to have this time in conversation with you.
Brian, I appreciate your invitation. It's been a lovely chance to converse with you.
Beautiful. Thank you, Dan, once again, and thank you everyone, and we'll see you all on the next episode. Bye.
What did you like the most about this episode? Take a moment to think about what change you can make in your life today.
Share your conscious action on social media using #ConsciousAction and tagging @ConsciousActionNZ so we can celebrate your impact on the world and create a ripple effect.
One easy action we would love for you to take right now is to share, like, and subscribe to this podcast. This will help us get these messages out into the world and inspire more people to take conscious action in their own lives, contributing to the better world we hope for.